Oh, Christ, thank you. Get off. No, no, no!
The movie looked like just another crime film on the surface, but behind the scenes, Scarface was chaotic from start to finish. Actors were getting injured, the production was nearly shut down, and the film itself was rejected again and again before it ever hit theaters. Everything about it pointed towards failure, yet somehow it became legendary. So what really happened behind the scenes of Scarface, and how many of its most iconic moments were never supposed to happen in the first place? Join us as we unveil 21 wild facts about this film that fans never figured out. Number 21. Miami banned the production. It's no surprise that many iconic movies and TV shows have hidden and weird facts behind them. For Scarface 1983, it starts from the very beginning, with the producers losing their chosen location. The city the producers picked for filming ended up rejecting the movie entirely, forcing Brian De Palma and his crew to recreate Miami elsewhere. The Miami Tourist Board was so concerned about the potential damage to the city's reputation that they refused to grant filming permits, effectively banning the production from shooting in the very location where the story was supposed to take place. The controversy began when news of the film's plot became public, birthing a citywide debate about whether Miami should allow itself to be portrayed as a haven for drug dealers and violent criminals. Local Cuban-American community leaders were particularly upset about the film's premise. To them, it would reinforce negative stereotypes about Cuban immigrants and make people associate Miami with the kind of drug violence that was already a real problem in the city during the early 80s. So after just 2 weeks of filming in Miami, the production crew was forced to pack up and move to California, where they had to work creatively to make Los Angeles look like Miami. The art department and location scouts had to dress up streets and buildings to convince audiences they were watching events unfold in Florida rather than California. But the chaos didn't stop with the location. Number 20. Pacino destroyed his nose. When Al Pacino agreed to do the cocaine scenes, he thought he was just doing his job as a dedicated method actor. What he didn't realize was that the white powder would permanently alter his breathing for the rest of his life. The prop masters used powdered baby laxative to create those iconic mountains of cocaine that appear throughout the film. While many actors simply pretend to snort substances, Pacino actually inhaled the stuff directly into his nasal passages. It's not like the decision to use baby laxative was unusual for Hollywood at the time, but what made Scarface different was the sheer volume of fake cocaine Pacino had to consume for his role as Tony Montana. And it didn't happen just a few times. There are numerous scenes where his character indulges in massive drug binges, and Pacino committed fully to making these moments look authentic. Years later, in a 2015 interview, Pacino revealed the lasting consequences of his dedication to the role. Even though the baby laxative was considered safe for the limited exposure most actors would experience, the quantities required for Scarface's extensive drug scenes proved to be more harmful than anyone anticipated, leaving one of Hollywood's greatest actors with permanently altered breathing as an unexpected souvenir from one of his most iconic roles. And the damage wasn't just on set, it followed them into the ratings battle. Number 19. The movie was rated X 3 times. The first time Brian De Palma submitted Scarface to the MPAA, they slapped it with an X rating. In the 1980s, an X rating was a death sentence for any movie. It meant so newspapers wouldn't run the ads, and the movie would not even be found within a square inch of a theater. Talk about being dead on arrival. Brian went back and re-edited the film. He submitted it again, but nothing changed. It was still rated X. He cut more footage and resubmitted it a third time. One would think this time it'd go well, but no, X rating again. Brian was furious. He told Universal he was done cutting. If they wanted him removed more, they could fire him and find someone else to butcher his movie. The studio decided to appeal. They brought in an appeals board composed of theater owners, studio executives, and independent distributors. The vote came back 17-3 in favor of an R rating. That was the saving grace for Scarface. But there's something most people still don't know. After winning the appeal, Brian De Palma still went on to secretly release his original uncut version. He figured the MPAA wouldn't notice the difference, and truly, they didn't. The movie that hit theaters was the same version that had been rejected 3 times, and Brian got away with it completely. Even before all that drama, the project almost went in a completely different direction. Number 18. The original director quit over politics. Before Brian De Palma ever touched the project, Scarface was supposed to be a Sidney Lumet film. Sidney was a legend. He directed 12 Angry Men, Dog Day Afternoon, and Network. He was even the one who came up with the brilliant idea to update the story from 1930s Chicago to 1980s Miami. He suggested making Tony a Cuban immigrant arriving during the Mariel boat lift. His concept was that cocaine in Reagan's America was the modern equivalent of alcohol during Prohibition. But Sidney wanted to make a political film. He wanted the film to blame the Reagan administration for the cocaine epidemic flooding American cities. However, producer Martin Bregman disagreed. He wanted an operatic gangster movie, not a political statement. The two clashed repeatedly until Sidney walked away from the project entirely. The producer immediately replaced him with Brian De Palma, and the rest is history. Behind the scenes, the story got even more personal. Number 17. A cocaine addict. Writing about cocaine. Oliver Stone had been struggling with a serious cocaine habit for about 2.5 years before he began writing the script. His first-hand knowledge of addiction gave him an intimate understanding of the drug world he was portraying on screen. When Oliver first started working on the Scarface screenplay, he began his research in Florida and the Caribbean, interviewing police officers and criminals to get a complete picture of the cocaine trade that was ravaging Miami in the early 80s. However, this research process was actually making his own addiction worse, as being surrounded by the drug culture and constantly thinking about cocaine was feeding his dependency. Oliver decided to move to Paris to get away from the environment that was triggering his addiction. The change of scenery and removal from the Miami drug scene allowed him to focus on his recovery while continuing to work on the script. He later described the writing process as his personal revenge against the drug that had nearly destroyed his life and drained his finances. That same intensity carried straight into Pacino's preparation. Number 16. Al Pacino trained with Roberto Duran. Many people don't know this, but Pacino didn't just show up and play Tony Montana so perfectly. He literally transformed himself to get the fight scenes right. Pacino worked with knife combat experts to learn how to handle a blade. He trained extensively with firearms, and he spent weeks working out with Roberto Duran, the legendary Panamanian boxer known as Manos de Piedra, Hands of Stone. Roberto didn't just get Pacino in shape, he helped inspire the character's aggression. Pacino later said that Tony Montana had a certain lion in him. That ferocity, that animal intensity, was Roberto's influence. The boxer brought something primal to the performance that Pacino carried through every scene. However, Pacino wasn't the only one pushing limits. Number 15. Michelle Pfeiffer. Starved for half a year. Everyone will agree that dieting is not unusual on movie sets, but sometimes it's way too extreme. Michelle was playing Elvira, a cocaine addict, trophy wife. She wanted to look the part, so she stopped eating food, literally. Her diet consisted of only tomato soup and cigarettes. The shoot was only supposed to last 3 or 4 months. Michelle timed her weight loss so she would be at her thinnest for the final scenes, but the production ran far, far longer than planned. What was supposed to be a few months stretched to 6, and Michelle kept starving herself the entire time. Crew members started bringing her bagels because they were genuinely worried about her health. She later admitted she was terrified every single night on that male-dominated set. The only other woman around was Mary Elizabeth, Master Antonio. And who can blame her for being scared? She was practically swimming in a sea of testosterone, starving herself while surrounded by gangster guys staying in character. It was, by her own account, a miserable experience. Michelle may have gone to extreme levels for the movie, but ironically, she almost didn't get the role at all. Number 14. Pacino didn't want Michelle Pfeiffer. Despite her superb performance, Michelle Pfeiffer was a relatively unknown actress in 1982. Her biggest credit was Grease 2, which, by the way, had just flopped spectacularly at the box office. When her name came up for Elvira, Both Al Pacino and Brian De Palma rejected her almost instantly. In Pacino's opinion, she wasn't experienced enough, and she didn't look right for the part. He wanted Glenn Close, who was already an established dramatic actress. De Palma agreed with him, as he didn't think Michelle could handle the role. But producer Martin Bregman saw something nobody else did. He stood for Michelle relentlessly, and every time Pacino or De Palma pushed back, Martin pushed even harder. He was convinced she was perfect for Elvira. Eventually, he overruled them both. Michelle got the part, and it changed her life forever. The role launched her into stardom and made her one of the biggest actresses of the decade. It turned out Pacino was dead wrong, and Bregman knew it the whole time. Michelle finally stepped in, but how she did it is shocking. Number 13. Michelle Pfeiffer. Cut Al Pacino for real. Michelle Pfeiffer spent 2 months auditioning for the role of Elvira, and she kept getting worse. By her own admission, she was so nervous that her performances deteriorated with every callback. Brian De Palma finally told her it wasn't going to work out. She went home thinking she'd lost the part forever. Then, a month later, they called her back for one final screen test. Michelle showed up with nothing left to lose. She didn't care anymore. They ran the restaurant scene, the explosive moment at the end of the film, where Elvira finally walks out on Tony. Pfeiffer committed completely. She swiped her arm across the table and sent dishes and glasses flying everywhere. When they yelled "cut," there was blood all over the set. Everyone rushed over to check on Pfeiffer. They couldn't find a single scratch on her. Then they looked at Pacino. She had cut him. A shard of glass had sliced his finger during her outburst. Michelle was convinced she had just destroyed any chance of getting the role. Instead, it was the moment Pacino, finally. The audition in which she drew blood from the leading man became the one that launched her career. And some of the film's most shocking moments weren't fiction at all. Number 12. The chainsaw scene was based on reality. The most shocking and disturbing scene in Scarface, where Tony is forced to watch his friend Angel get dismembered with a chainsaw in a hotel bathroom, wasn't just a product of Oliver Stone's imagination, but was actually based on real drug violence he learned about during research for the film. During his research process, Oliver spent time with Miami-Dade County police officers who shared stories about extreme violence they had witnessed during drug-related investigations. One particular case involved a real drug kingpin who used a chainsaw to dismember an informant who betrayed him to law enforcement, then burned the body to destroy evidence. This horrific real-life incident served as the basis for one of the movie's most memorable and disturbing scenes. Law enforcement officials who supported the film praised its realistic portrayal of drug violence, arguing that it accurately reflected the real-world consequences of the cocaine trade devastating Miami at the time. But danger didn't just exist in the story, it hit the set too. Number 11. Al Pacino burned his hand and shut down production. One of the most iconic scenes in movie history is definitely the final shootout in Tony Montana's mansion, but filming it nearly ended in a huge disaster. In March 1983, during one take, Pacino tripped during a fight sequence and, out of reflex, grabbed the barrel of his machine gun. The gun had just been fired for real, so the muzzle was blazing hot. Pacino reacted quickly, pulling his left hand back, but he had burned it badly and had to be rushed to the Sherman Oaks Burn Center. The incident caused the crew to shut down production for over a week while he recovered. As if that wasn't enough, while Pacino was in the hospital, a premature bomb explosion on set injured 2 stuntmen. It was as though the production were cursed, but Pacino returned, finished the shoot, and delivered one of the most memorable performances of his career. The burns healed. The legend didn't fade. Even with all that chaos, the film attracted unexpected talent, but things still went south. Number 10. Steven Spielberg directed part of the movie. While Brian De Palma was busy orchestrating the complex shootout sequence at Tony Montana's mansion, his friend Steven Spielberg happened to be visiting the set and ended up stepping behind the camera to capture a specific moment in the climactic battle. Steven and Brian had been close friends since their film school days in the 1970s, along with other future Hollywood legends like George Lucas and Martin. The two directors had always wanted to work together on a project, but their busy careers and different film styles had never allowed for a formal collaboration. When Steven dropped by the Scarface set during the filming of the final gunfight scene, Brian saw an opportunity to finally make their collaboration happen, even if it was just for a single shot. At the time, Steven had just finished directing E.T. the Extraterrestrial and was perhaps looking for a way to experiment with darker, more violent films before he would later tackle serious dramas like Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan. One detail fans miss is the origin of the main character's name. Where did the name Tony Montana come from? Number 9. Tony Montana was named after an NFL quarterback. One of cinema's most infamous gangster characters got his last name from an unlikely source when screenwriter Oliver Stone decided to honor his favorite football player by naming Tony Montana after San Francisco 49ers quarterback Joe Montana. The choice to use Montana as the character's last name was particularly fitting, given that Joe Montana was known for his calm composure under pressure and his ability to perform in clutch situations, qualities that Tony Montana would need in abundance as he navigated the dangerous world of Miami's cocaine trade. However, the similarities between the two Montanas ended there as Joe Montana built his reputation through teamwork, discipline, and clean living, while Tony Montana's path to power was paved with violence, betrayal, and self-destructive behavior. But his influence didn't stop at Hollywood. Number 8. Money laundering company named after Tony Montana. Scarface influenced rappers and college kids, but it also reached dictators. Saddam Hussein was obsessed with the film, as he watched it over and over again. Allegedly, he saw something in Tony Montana that he admired: the ruthlessness, the ambition, the refusal to answer to anyone. When the Iraqi dictator needed to set up a shell company for money laundering, he promptly named it Montana Management. A real-life tyrant modeled his criminal enterprise after a fictional drug lord from a Hollywood movie. But back on set, there was another surprising detail most people missed. Number 7. There was only one actual Cuban in the main cast. In the movie, Al Pacino was a Cuban drug lord, but Pacino had nothing to do with Cuban heritage. He was Italian-American from the Bronx. Michelle Pfeiffer, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, and Robert Loggia were not Cuban. The only actual Cuban-American in the principal cast was Steven Bauer, who played Manny Rivera, Tony's best friend and right-hand man, and Steven barely had to audition. Casting director Alex Gordon spotted him in the waiting room and immediately knew he was perfect for the role of Manny. Brian and the producer agreed on the spot that no audition was necessary. Beyond landing the role effortlessly, Steven became essential to the production in another way. He worked closely with Pacino to help him nail the Cuban accent and dialect. He taught Pacino the rhythms of Cuban speech, the slang, the pronunciation. It's safe to say that without his guidance, Tony Montana might have sounded completely different. The one real Cuban on set made sure everyone else got it right. Still, when the film was finally ready, things didn't go as planned. Number 6. The premiere was a disaster. Probably no one expected that one of the best crime movies ever made had a disastrous premiere. It was so bad that celebrities hated it and simply walked out. The premiere was held on December 1st, 1983 at the world premiere at a New York theater. Many guests who were considered Hollywood royalties were there to see it in person. Lucille Ball even brought her entire family to see what all the fuss was about. It should have been a triumph, but was a catastrophe. Lucille Ball was horrified by the violence and language. Dustin Hoffman reportedly fell asleep during the screening. Kurt Vonnegut and John Irving couldn't even make it past the chainsaw scene. They got up and walked out in disgust. When the credits rolled, the audience sat in stunned silence. Nobody knew what to say. Al Pacino walked into the after-party at Sardis expecting celebration. Instead, he found a room full of wax figures. That's how he described it. People just stared. Nobody wanted to talk to him. Nobody wanted to congratulate him. The only person who came up to Pacino with any enthusiasm was Eddie Murphy, who told him he loved it. Only one person out of an entire room full of Hollywood elite got it. Yet, out of that chaos came something iconic. Number 5. The signature word was invented on set. Anyone who's seen Scarface has heard Tony Montana say "yayo." It's his slang for cocaine. He uses it throughout the entire film. But here's the thing, that word was never in the script. Pacino learned it while working with dialect coaches to master the Cuban accent. During the infamous chainsaw scene, he improvised the line on set. Brian De Palma loved it so much that he kept using it throughout the rest of the movie. A word that wasn't supposed to exist in the film became one of its signature phrases. That's the power of Pacino staying in character and bringing something real to the performance. Speaking of character, casting choices in this film were rather strange. Number 4. Tony's mother was only 4 years older than him. Miriam Colon was Tony's disapproving mother who wanted nothing to do with her criminal son. She delivers some of the most emotionally devastating scenes in the entire film. When she rejects Tony and throws him out of her house, fans believe every word. She feels like a woman who has lived decades of disappointment, a mother worn down by years of shame and heartbreak. But here's the thing, Miriam Colon was born in 1936. Al Pacino was born 4 years later. She was only 4 years older than the man playing her son. In real life, they could have been classmates. Hollywood has always had a problem with casting women as mothers to men nearly their own age. But this might be one of the most extreme examples in cinema history. Miriam was 46 during filming. Pacino was 42. And somehow, through sheer acting ability and the magic of makeup, she convinced audiences worldwide that she had raised this man from birth. That's how good Miriam was, and everyone agreed. Speaking of agreement, the producers and the director were not so cordial. Number 3. Universal tried to add a rap soundtrack. The original score for Scarface was composed by Giorgio Moroder, the Italian producer known as the godfather of disco. He had already won an Oscar for Midnight Express and scored Flashdance the same year. Giorgio created a synthetic score that perfectly captured the neon excess of 1980s Miami. Songs like Push It to the Limit became anthems. Given how massively influential Scarface became in hip-hop culture, Universal has repeatedly asked Brian De Palma to re-release the film with a rap soundtrack. Rappers have been quoting the movie for decades. The connection seems natural, but De Palma has refused every single time. He believes Giorgio's score is perfect. He won't let anyone touch it. The synth stays. The rap stays out. Brian won't compromise his vision for anyone. Despite all the resistance, the film found a way to win. Number 2. The movie broke the price tag. Initially, Scarface barely broke even at the box office. A movie hated by critics and ignored by Hollywood was, by all accounts, bound to fade into obscurity. But then came the summer of 1984, and Scarface exploded on home video. The film was released as a 2-tape VHS set. That was expensive, but people didn't care. They bought it anyway. And just like that, Scarface became the first movie in history to sell 100,000 copies at that price point. The home video market was just hitting its stride, and Scarface rode the wave perfectly. When the 20th anniversary DVD dropped in 2003, it sold over 2 million copies in the first week alone, making it the best-selling R-rated DVD of all time at that point. Scarface had gone from failure to immortal. But before it became a classic, the lead role almost went to someone else. Number 1. Robert De Niro almost took the role of Scarface. It's important to note that Al Pacino wasn't handed the role of Tony Montana. He fought for it. In the early 80s, Pacino saw the original 1932 Scarface at the Tiffany Theater in Los Angeles and became obsessed with Paul Mooney's performance. He immediately called his manager, Martin Bregman, and told him they needed to remake it. But Pacino wasn't the only one interested. Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese were also circling the project. Robert was coming off Raging Bull. He was the hottest actor in Hollywood, and he wanted Tony Montana. Pacino didn't back down. He pushed hard to make sure the role was his. He insisted on taking it himself and made it his personal mission to bring Tony Montana to life. What could have been a Scorsese-De Niro collaboration became a De Palma-Pacino legend instead. Scarface was written by an addict, directed by a rebel, hated by critics, and nearly destroyed by chaos behind the scenes. Yet 4 decades later, it's a cultural phenomenon. And that's what makes Scarface more than just a movie. Would Scarface have been successful if these were discovered in time? And are there more hidden details yet to be discovered? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.